should Virat Kohli be dropped?
We haven't done one of these in like a month, and you just thought we'd start
go
soft.
Yeah.
Just a gentle opener. I don't think he can play against England. I thought it was very fair to take him to Australia. He's probably, I think Damien Fleming picked him as like the 4th or 5th best tourist he's ever seen going to Australia as a batter, and I think that's fair. He made 100 in Perth in a situation where the game was in his favour, if we're being honest. The pitch had flattened out a little bit by then.
And he came in with the...
There was plenty of runs on board. Everything was... Australian bowlers were tired.
He didn't even realise he'd hit a century.
And after that, I was like, he probably only needs a couple of good knocks, and I'd be willing to say that you would take him to England.
Yeah.
He really didn't make another run, right? And I don't think he looked in as bad form as Rohit Sharma did, and there's a bigger question here about older players and when you drop them and when you get rid of them. But I thought he had to make a significant amount of runs in Australia to get the trip to England. He hasn't done that, so I don't really see how you justify that. The issue is, I'm not sure that they have a natural number 4 for English conditions. So is it better to pick the guy who's going to average 30 to 35, who's experienced, rather than a younger player?
Would he average 30 to 35, though? There's no Jimmy Clouderson anymore, but still.
I mean, if it was me, and I'm looking at Wokes, and I'm looking at Cass, and Potts and everyone else, I'm like, oh, it's not Broad and Anderson, is it? Like, it should be a step down for him. But he played them when he was at his peak, and he struggled. He's now coming over well beyond his peak. Look, it'd be interesting, Bumble probably didn't see that much of it because it was overnight, but you watch him, I think at one stage he took a leg stump guard, he took an off stump guard, he had his feet closed, he had his feet open, he batted outside the crease, he batted on the crease, he walked down the wicket a couple of balls, and I was like, what problem is he trying to overcome here? Is it being, because it's all been caught in the cordon.
And despite that, he was being caught
and he kept
behind or at first, second slip, pretty much throughout.
Essentially, he has the exact same issue that Ricky Ponting always had, which is they don't like to leave the ball. So all you need to do is bowl 5th and 6th stump line, and eventually these days you're going to nick off, and that's what he kept doing again and again. There were full balls, there were short balls, there were sucker balls out. Do you know what I mean? Like they gave him every option, and he nicked all of them.
Is there any other batter that would average 23 in a calendar year and not get dropped, other than Virat Kohli?
Zach Crawley.
No, I don't think. Zach Crawley had a decent India tour the start of the year, so it's not 12 months.
I was being
and then
averaged low 24.
And then he missed a whole series. But okay. Virat Kohli, Zach Crawley, any others?
Virat Kohli.
Rohit Sharma.
How old? 36.
36. Yeah. How old are you when you...
36, same age. There's a bit of a difference between the ability of Virat Kohli and me.
You're a bit higher, right?
By the way. He will know he's past his best, and that will hurt.
Did you know? When did you...
Absolutely. I'd sort of wanted to finish earlier than 36, but was persuaded to carry on at the club at Lancashire County Cricket, playing county cricket. So back to Kohli at 36 years of age, reflexes, all that Gerard said there, nick off. International cricket, whoever it is, know what they're doing. They're well planned. And so when he comes to England, or when India come to England, you know exactly where it's going to be, just outside off stump, and the business area is that slips. 36 years of age. Up here, he knows what he should be doing, off stump, middle and leg, leave the ball, can't leave the ball. Reflexes.
Yeah.
Your reflexes just gently go. Ricky Ponting has just said that he carried on a bit longer than he should have done.
Most people do, don't
They
they?
do. You hang on.
It's also hard to drop a player like that, right? It's not a normal player to drop.
So the selectors, the India selectors, has he got enough credit? He's been a world class, one of the greatest players that we've seen. He's past his best. Have they got a better player? Do they want to build for the future with a better player at number 4? And so the coach will have a huge say. He will have an enormous say because he's been in that dressing room and seen what he's like off the field. How does he react? The coach will have a massive say.
The problem with the coach, of course, is that it's Gautam Gambhir. He's got issues, pre-existing issues with Virat Kohli. They're not always been on the best terms. And also, he's taken over this job, and since he's taken over this job, they've lost a limited over series for the first time in 15 years, whatever it is, 20 years in Sri Lanka. They've been beaten 3-0 by New Zealand. They went 1-0 up against Australia and didn't win another test. It's a big call for that coach to be able to make that decision at the moment. And just to get back to the Ponting thing, if you look at their careers, I don't think Kohli or Ponting are the greatest technicians of batting we've seen. I mean, Bumble's more suited to make that claim than I am. But I think that because of the athleticism that they both have and the quickness that they both had, when they were young, they struggled a little bit. Then they have these incredible peaks that almost no other players have ever had. And then they had this long period of being very ordinary at the end. Ponting kept thinking it was going to come back, and it just didn't come back. And I think that seems to be the thing that Kohli's in. When you're that much better than everyone else, you think that you're going to, that eventually it's going to come back. But we're talking about, he's had one good year in his last 4 or 5 years now. Like, it's a long period of time without any runs, right? And I think what made it worse in this series was the fact that Rohit Sharma didn't make any runs, right? Like, Rohit Sharma made 0 runs. Like, I think, did Bumrah almost outscore him in the series? Like, it was really bad for Rohit Sharma. So you've got the two of them completely tanking. If they had, I don't know, if they both averaged 35 in that series, India might have been 2-0. 2-all, sorry.
The thing is, everybody has a bad series, but they had an even worse series against New Zealand at home.
Yeah, this is prolonged. Yeah. And the one thing that everybody would agree, when you're talking about great cricketers, the one thing that you talk about that he's got that the rest haven't, time. He's lost time. Yeah. It's gone. That time's gone. And it comes with age. I've done it at a much lower level. So your time, everything up here tells you what you should be doing, doesn't it? I'll leave the ball scored, doesn't it? Gone. It's gone. These are great bowlers, international bowlers.
So when you were a coach, Bumble, you must have overseen some great players, and you must have known that they were still good for an innings. They were still good, and maybe they justified their position. But you must have seen it coming. You must have seen the end. Yeah, what were the telltale signs? I mean, apart from just looking at a scoreboard.
Well, again, that if it's a repetitive way of getting out, which they know where they're going to get out. At international level, you know that at Test match cricket, that there's going to be a bank of slips, and that's where they're going to operate. The bowlers, the bowling coach talks about at the top of off, just outside off stump, 4th or 5th stump. That's the business area, and they'll be in there all day. You'll get 2 or 3, 4 slips in there all day to nick him off. And if you keep nicking off, it's a telltale sign for anybody that reflexes, reactions have gone.
Is there anybody that you can think of, Graham Gooch comes to mind, but it was slightly different, that, as you say, whatever happened between the age of 20 and 27 is irrelevant, but then they hit their peak and they had consistent period of success. They then went through what Kohli seems to have done for the last 3 or 4 years. Maybe not for 3 or 4 years, maybe a year, maybe 2. Yeah. But they came back again.
Is Graham Thorpe?
I think Thorpe was always consistent. No,
but didn't he? But he left when he left the side. He was on a bit of a downslope, and when he came back, he had a good couple of years.
I think that was a bit different because he left for reasons that weren't really cricket related.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I mean,
so it wasn't age, it wasn't form or fit.
He was a consistent player.
I think Mike Hussey had periods where, because I mean, he averaged 80 over 19 tests, Mike Hussey. Then it dipped. Then he made a bunch of runs again. Then it dipped. So he did have a couple of waves in his late 30s. Hey?
Because he didn't debut till after he was
30. Well, it's a completely different career, isn't it? And also, Mike Hussey is a very... I think players like Mike Hussey, Graham Gooch, Kumar Sangakkara, Yunus Khan, I would put in that as well.
Yunus Khan.
They are either great technicians in so much they can tell you exactly, my hand's gone too far around the bat or anything like that, or they're great problem solvers. Right, so you look at Steve Smith in this last series.
I was just about to mention, so could Steve Smith be about to do what we're asking whether Virat Kohli is capable of?
Steve Smith, to me, reminds me a lot of Yunus Khan. Do you remember that series Yunus Khan came out here?
How old is Steve Smith?
He would be 34? 5?
I'll find out. You two talk.
Do you remember when Yunus Khan came out here right towards the end of his career and he was facing the fast bowlers and he was jumping around and we were all like, what's happening? I watched Steve Smith in this series and he was exaggerating. Sometimes he was taking a step this far outside off stump and I was like,
35.
He doesn't need to do that. Yeah. I think what he was trying to do is he was trying to mimic what he used to do to get into a position, and then once he felt comfortable after 20, 25 balls, he would bat normally, which is what Yunus Khan did on that tour over here. Those guys, like Yunus Khan, we don't even know how old Yunus Khan was. Didn't he make a joke once? He was 3 or 4 years older than his scheduled age. And he was still playing Test cricket. I think Yunus Khan was a brilliant problem solver, and Steve Smith is like that. I don't think,
Could you mention Mark Ramprakash?
Ramps is an interesting one, right? But how much of Ramps is just, and he's probably in a better situation than us, but how much of Ramps is the fact that it didn't work at test level? Yeah.
Brilliant.
Right? Studied the game.
Yeah, brilliant.
I mean,
I went to the Oval once, and Ramps was facing a left arm seamer coming over the wicket to him, and his left foot was like outside off stump, like he was set up to play the cover drive before it came, and I was like, why would anyone do that? Because you just got to get trapped LBW from the left armour. And he was like, every time the ball was straight, he'd just pick it off. Yeah. And he was worried about being caught behind. That's the sort of stuff I'm talking about with Steve Smith and Yunus Khan, where they go extreme.
I mean, we're going off at a tangent because I'm absolutely certain that if Mike Ramprakash would have played in central contracts, he'd have been box office, absolute box office.
I think if he plays under Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes, he's probably box office as well.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I think he's his own man. I think Mark would be his own man and he would play his own way. But the dedication of being absolutely an England cricketer and not going back to Middlesex or Surrey and having to do this. Is he going to be selected? Is he not going to be selected? If he's got the security of a central contract, he would get down to business. I reckon he'd be a box office player.
But I think your general point is, and you're right, most players, once the decline starts, they don't come back.
It's timing. It's that little split second that they lose.
There's something that I think it's Kumar Sangakkara's father was talking about when he was talking about his son batting, and he was saying that the reason that the great players go on is because of that technical mastery. So you see Steve Smith going, every innings I try 8 different things, right? And Rahul Dravid was talking about that with Sachin Tendulkar once, and he basically said, Sachin Tendulkar in an innings could be like, okay, I'm going to try this now. And Rahul Dravid would be like, well, have you practiced this or whatever? And he's like, no. And like, no, other batters can't just try a new style in the middle. But Sachin knew it would work at that day. That's kind of what we're talking about. I think Virat is the sort of person who could master anything, but he has to go into the nets, work on it, spend his time getting there. And within a game, when your timing is gone, you're not as quick as you used to be.
One chance.
Exactly.
One chance.
And he nicks off once and he's gone.
That's it, gone.
And I think that's... I think that is what we are seeing here, everything else. But the other really interesting thing, when we looked at the data, older players struggle more against spin as they get older than they do against quick bowling.
Okay.
And I think that is because you have to move quickly against spin, and a lot of pace bowling is reacting. Did you feel that?
No, it was the quicks that troubled me.
It felt a lot worse.
And I mean, just going back to mine.
Well.
Yeah,
just also, I had
By the
to
time
get.
the spinner came on, he was already 17 not out.
I had to get my
20 not out.
glasses. I knew that I needed specs.
Yeah.
But, I'm not seeing this as clearly as I should do. So then you're getting spectacles early 30s, and then you need stronger spectacles. It's telling you.
Okay, so you made the point. Look, we can talk about whether Virat Kohli plays at 4 against England, but if not Kohli, you need somebody who can come in.
Well, it's the selector's job to find somebody who's better.
Who is that person? Rishabh Pant?
I don't think they can.
Gloves up?
I don't think they can bat him at 4, can they? It's a bit.
No.
Also, he's just not technically sound enough to bat 4 in England. I don't think. I think they'd probably prefer him at 6 in England.
Dangerous.
Okay.
Dangerous.
So
5 and 6 is great, but
there's been a lot of middle order batters that have come in and come out of that India side over the last 2 or 3 years. From Surya Kumar Yadav to Ishan Kishan to, you forget how many.
I think the issue that they have.
Shreyas Iyer.
Yeah, well, so Shreyas Iyer is a really interesting one. Shreyas Iyer is obviously a top-level international talent, but he's fallen out of favour. He's not, behaviour issues. I'm not saying it's all his fault, but there's been some issues there. But Shreyas Iyer basically got really good during COVID at the time when he should have been travelling around the world getting more experience outside of Asia. He hasn't had enough chance to develop his game. If you throw him into England, he could struggle. The other issue is, if they have to replace Rohit and Virat, they then need an extra opener and a number 4. I think that gets tougher. I think they can cover number 3 and number 4 with KL Rahul and Shubman Gill, if they have to. But then they still need another opener.
But when a team's in transition, which they are, they've got to find some new players. That's what selectors and coaches and captains, that's where you earn your coin. That's what you've got to do. They've got plenty of cricketers to choose from in India, and so it's a great opportunity for younger cricketers to make the mark and to get onto that tour. If I was involved or anything to do with selection, I'd be stimulated by this as to who have I got? Who are the younger players coming through? Who do I need to back? because I need to back a player to go to India, and I might just find a new Dravid or a new Tendulkar or a new Ganguly, because that's how they came into the team in '96.
Around that period.
That's about that time. They all came at that time. It was a three test series. We won 1-0. And then Pakistan came and they beat us 2-0. But that was the start of these 3 young cricketers. They've got to do it again.
Okay, so
They've got the talent. That's not the issue, is it?
Yes or no, first test in England, does Virat Kohli play at 4?
I wouldn't pick him, though.
No. Because I'm a selector and I'm going to find some players.
If it's a team in transition, I don't really see the point in picking Virat Kohli at the moment. I do think it's harder if Rohit can't get picked up. So just on the form thing, Kohli's been on a decline for a while, but we've seen him play very good in some other formats, and he had one very good year in 2023 where he did make a lot of runs, right? Rohit has been in really, 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 really good form, and is now, the second half of this year, the last, 8-9 test matches, can't find a run at all. You don't know how a player's going to taper off, right? That could be a form blip, but at his age, they might just be like, he's done. A couple of minutes ago, he looked like one of the best players in the world, though. So it's so tough. But
and you're going to lose your captain as well.
I would keep Rohit and remove Kohli.
That is the call of a selector.
Yeah.
He's done. You've got to make that call.
Can you lose both?
Yes, because if they're in transition, they're in transition, right?
So would you play Rohit in that first test against?
I would still have Rohit.
At the top of the order?
Yeah, because I think it's only been about 7 tests. I don't want to drop a player of Rohit's talent on 7 tests if he's my captain. Also, Jasprit Bumrah is the only other person that is realistically going to captain that side. That brings up a lot of other issues with resting and injury. I mean, they almost bowled him to death in the last series. Now they're like, now you've got a captain, you're going to have to play almost every game.
Yeah.
So I would rather take a punt on Rohit, and if it doesn't work, Rohit hangs the cap up.
I would, if I was involved at all with Indian cricket, I would go to Jasprit Bumrah and say, what's your team for the first test against England? What's your team? Because he could be captain. He's every chance of being captain.
Yeah.
What do you want? And I'd go that way.
What do you think he'd say?
What do I think he'd say? I haven't a clue.
Do you think he would say, I want Rohit and Virat?
I would want to be, in our discussion here, I would want to be in that changing room. I want to see the character of the individual. I want to see the leadership of the individual with the rest of the team and the younger players. And if I have to make a call, I'll make it. Give us a job.
Give us all a job.